everyone was in a pretty reasonable range. I mean, Mikko Rantanen was our highest. I think was at 23. But I think Scheifele played 22 for them. So, that's a normal range for those type of guys. It gave some more minutes to, Granlund, Johnson. Robertson got his most minutes since he's been back in. So that's kind of the secondary piece of it, which isn't a bad thing either.
That's something you're looking at maybe doing again?
Yeah, I think so. Well, we'll see. We haven't made any firm decisions, but we'll see. I mean, Miro's been back one night. I don't think he's ready to go from 14 or 15 minutes to 25. So, we'll just play that game to game.
With Sagan, I think it was like a 6-month recovery. He did it in like 4.5 months or something like that. With Miro, was it a similar sort of month and a half out of schedule situation?
No. I think, different situation. I think Miro came back on the front end of the time, but it was within the time. He wasn't setting any records, for getting back early like Sagan. I think it was a different situation, but he's definitely on the front end, and I think having that first game, him getting it under his belt, I think is a great thing.
You talked about easing him back in a little bit, not loading him up with 26 minutes a night. Does he have medically any minute restrictions early on that you're working with? So
no restrictions. It's just based on how he feels. So just communication. We're talking to him. I think he likes the idea of easing in, but he'll decide. I think from everything, from my understanding, the knee looks fantastic, and there's no restrictions.
We've talked about adversity all year, but you've added different pieces and parts. How has that been? I mean, like we talk about Graham, we talk about Ceci, we talk about Rantanen. This has all been added, and now Miro and Sagan in a 4-month period, 3-month period, and it just seems like things have come together. I didn't know if there's any behind-the-scenes type stuff that has built that chemistry.
Yeah. You know what? I think, listen, we've got a good group. I think they're really inclusive, especially bringing new guys in. I think there's some familiarity with the guys that have come in. Obviously, Rantanen and are Finns, and they played with Rupe and Miro and those guys. So there's familiarity there. Ceci had knew Mish played for Mish Donskoff in Ottawa as a coach, but also knew Duchesne and knew a bunch of other guys. So. I think it's been fairly seamless, but I think we've got an easy room to kind of fit into that.
Has Duchesne been an interesting guy? Because he has played with, this is 15, but he's played with a bunch of these guys who've come in here.
Yeah, he has. And he knows just about everyone, and he's a little bit of a hockey encyclopedia. There's not many guys that play that he doesn't know, everything about them. So, and the fact he's been on a bunch of teams and has been a high-level guy his whole life, I think he's come across a lot of these guys.
With Jamie, he took a couple penalties early in the series, but that one last night sticking up for Lindell, and his game overall, it seemed like maybe he had a little bit up last night. Yeah, I
thought he was physical. I thought he was engaged. Did a great job on with the goalie out 5-on-6. That penalty. Anytime you're protecting a teammate, as a group, we're going to dig in and try and kill that, and we did that. For me, he's close. He's close to getting some offense. He's had some looks. He's just got to stick with it.
Been a couple of shifts with Wyatt and Robo where they've kind of upped their physicality playing with him. Does he have that influence on line mates?
Yeah, I mean, he has that influence on our team.
Yeah.
He's the one guy on our team that, everybody on the other team knows when he's out there. And, I think a lot of our guys benefit from that, even if you're not seeing that shift to shift from him.
Both these series have been so tight. Feel like every game Colorado lost, they felt they could win. Same with you. Obviously, Winnipeg feels the same way. Talked about having all the shot attempts. Just how tight has this series felt for you?
Yeah, they're all tight. It's about... It's about winning the small margins, and it goes back, are you winning the special teams battle? Are you winning the goaltending battle? Are you winning the 5-on-5 battle? And if you're checking more boxes than the other team in those areas, you got a good chance to win. Having said that, you need some bounces. You need to stay healthy. You got to win in overtime. there's a lot of things that go into that mix. So we're finding ways to win close games at a time of year when every game's close.
That first goal seems like one Jake would have won it back last night. How impressed were you that he performed as well as he did after something like that early in the game?
Yeah, great response. Unflappable, and I think, I think our history with him, there was no panic on the bench. They knew that with Jake that one goal like that, it wasn't going to bleed into 4 or 5. That he had the mental toughness to recover quickly, and he did, and he was our best player the rest of the way.
You said you thought that Jake had gotten better over the last few years just as a playoff goalie overall.
Yeah.
Is it easy to forget almost that he's still in his mid-20s?
Yeah. I mean, I saw some numbers today on U.S.-born goalies, playoff games, and he's far and away, I think, number 1 on that list already, and I still consider him a really young goaltender. So, yeah, I mean, he's special, and I think he's been to 2 conference finals now, and I think he's looking to find a way to make sure we go further this year.
As someone who's coached for Team Canada a couple of times, how much does a player's playoff performance kind of weigh a little more heavily when you make those selections?
Well, it's critical. I mean, that's those short-term events, Olympics, World Cups, things like that, World Championships. I mean, those are all, you just skip the regular season, you go right to the playoffs. So that's what everyone's looking for, the guys that can elevate at that time of year.